Welcome to the tutorial Studying the Model. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to analyze a character so that you can learn to make decisions about where to cut it up so that it can be distributed for breakdown. And this is not just for the cartoon rabbit, but hopefully for any character that you'll come across. So to begin, I'm going to disable the profile and three-quarter view of the rabbit as well as the grid. So on first glance, you might think it's pretty obvious where you're going to make your cuts. Around the ears, where they attach to the head, at the shoulder of the arm, the elbow, the hand, things like that. But you'll realize as you get down to the nitty-gritty that there are some choices that you have to make that you might be unsure about, such as the whiskers. Are they going to move independently or do they belong to the face? A lot of characters that have hair, especially long hair that isn't in a ponytail, you might wonder, should it move freely by itself or is it attached to the head? Decisions like this. So I'm going to help you along with that so that you make good choices when you decide to cut your character apart. So I'm just going to zoom in a little here and take a look at the face. So the eyes in particular are a tricky area to cut up because you're going to want movement in the eyes. So clearly it can't remain as a flat object of just what you see here. And there's so much expression done in the eyes of a character that it's not surprising that it's one of the more complicated areas to break down. In fact, most of the time we recommend that you break down the character's eyes into three separate layers. One layer being the pupil, the next layer being the white of the eye, so it would be white without the pupil and this part would be filled in. And the next layer would be the eyelid. In this case, you don't see an eyelid, but what you would do is cut around the eye, so this yellow skin or fur around the eye, and this white area would actually be hollow. And then the pupil would sit on top, but could pass behind the eyelid, this yellow skin, but in front of the white of the eye. And I'll actually do all this for you so you'll see for yourself exactly what I mean. Somewhere along the line, you're also going to probably draw several different eye shapes, and the eyelids perhaps half closed or fully closed for when the character blinks. So all of those will be on the layer where you see the eyelid or that outer ring of yellow with the hollow fill. If you happen to have a character in the three-quarter view, ours is okay. If you recall, I'll show you quickly. This is not too bad, but some characters have kind of goggly eyes where they extend beyond the side of the face. That's a pretty special case. A frog would be an example. The eyes often sit on top, like a hippo. There's a few animal characters where that might occur. That's a pretty special case, and you actually have to use something called a cutter in the module library, and we're going to get into the network view for things like that. But for now, because we have a simple character like this, that shouldn't be a problem. And maybe if you're following along with your own character and you have that complication, you might want to change the model a bit to follow along. I'm just going to go back to the front view and actually zoom out again. So the next thing I'd like to talk about are the hands. So let's zoom in on the hands. One of the mistakes that a lot of new animators make is breaking things down into too much detail. So what I mentioned above about the whiskers, you would probably in no instance ever break down the whiskers of a rabbit. It belongs to the face. They will not move independently. They'll be part of that face. And that's the same with the hands. A lot of people break down the fingers into the individual joints, which is crazy and I don't think ever done. You always draw the hands as is, and what you do to create expression and movements in the hand is to actually draw several hand sets in different gestures and poses, and then later on you'll do drawing replacements or drawing swaps so that you can actually have a variety of different hand movements as you're animating. So one thing to keep intact is definitely the hands. The next thing I want to talk about is flipping logos. So we don't actually have any type of a logo here. It's actually best seen once again in the three-quarter view. So as I mentioned before, generally there are 5 views that you would have drawn. The front, profile, three-quarter back, and back views. And these 5 drawings actually essentially give you a 180-degree turn. But when you think about it, you need the other 180 degrees so that each pose, except for the back and front, obviously has its opposite. So you would see this three-quarter rabbit facing the left and then also facing the right. And to do this, generally, I'll show you this when we animate, you attach your character to a peg and you flip the entire peg. But then if you think about it, if there's any type of writing or a logo on the character's clothing, such as, say, the S for Superman on his chest, and then you flip the drawing, the S would then get flipped backwards. Or you would be reading it backwards on his chest. So to avoid this type of problem and so that you have the flexibility of flipping your character around, it's recommended that you remove any logo or writing that cannot be mirrored properly on a separate layer. The last thing I'd like you to think about is your character in terms of overlap. And what I mean by that is that when you're going to cut out your character, you're not going to make blunt or severe cuts where appendages meet the body, such as the tail, the legs. You're really going to create an overlap so that if the appendage moves, that you won't see any type of a gap. And so when you see your character like this, you really have to think in those terms. You have to see right away that this tail is going to extend beyond, and you're going to create sort of a knobber around it, and that'll be tucked behind the character's robe. And so you have to really think about your character in those terms. And once again, I'm going to show you how to do all of this in the following tutorials. So that's pretty much it for studying the model. Stay tuned for the next tutorial, Breakdown Setup.